What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. This is going to be another 2020 album review, and I'm going to be reviewing the latest release from one of the top biggest, influential, worldwide, best-selling phenomenons of all time of rock, AC/DC, entitled Power Up. Power Up is the band's 17th studio album, and this is their first album in 6 years since the 2014 album of Rock or Bust. Now for me, I have been quite a bit of a fan of AC/DC. I have always admired the Bon Scott era, if not still the best and favourite era of AC/DC. I love the record of Highway to Hell, still my favourite AC/DC album, and one of my top 10 albums of all time, as well as I love another record called Power Rage, and as well as Let There Be Rock, which is another high favourite. But you can't go wrong with some of the records from the Brian Johnson era, from For Those About to Rock, Back in Black, The Razor's Edge, etc. And even I really enjoy some of the underrated AC/DC albums. So it's no word of a lie that AC/DC have been a band that I really like a lot for the most part. Whereas with the band that has as much lovers and as much haters, they are still never afraid to continue on their signature sound. And this is a band that has been going around for almost 50 years. This is the second album to feature the credits to Stevie Young, the nephew of Malcolm Young. And this is the first to be released as a dedication this time to Angus's brother Malcolm. After the release of Rock or Bust, 3 years later he had passed from dementia, and this album is a perfect choice to put the dedication to Malcolm into this album, as well as AC/DC had done that on Back in Black. So for Power Up, I personally think, when I listen to the album, this is a very good release, and it took me by surprise in an actual form of expression, because AC/DC have released a few albums where I find the songwriting was pretty bland, or not as greatly appreciative and more lackluster. But Power Up, in my opinion, is a worthwhile, big, refreshing sound. And I find that a lot of the songs on almost every track on this album works out as greatly. I really enjoy the overall experience. A lot of the songs of the album present just the obvious typical sound. It shows some flavour, and it really is just a part of their charm. The opening song, Realize, is a fantastic opening number. Very good track. Again, this is a number like some of the other opening tracks that we know and love. It starts things very greatly. It presents the album perfectly, shows some dynamics and a very good chorus. Great selection of riffs to begin the album in a rewarding way to hear something new, as well as the single, Shot in the Dark. The beat to this track is so consistent, but at the same time it still delivers of the musicianship and the driving chords on these bluesy licks and leads. To another song called Through the Mists of Time, which is another very good track, but at the same time, as with the lyrics, as far as I'm concerned, and the overall sound, is like a pretty different kind of feeling. Yes, I know it's pretty similar to the other tracks of the record, but it's something that presents a different tone. Even some of the later songs on the album that I really like a lot, like Demon Fire, which is my favourite song on this album, and the riff to this song is very much similar, if not close of being alike, to the Fleetwood Mac Oh Well inspired number of Beating Around the Bush from the Highway to Hell album. It's exciting, and it still is as thrilling, as well as Systems Down, which is a number that takes me to like a Let There Be Rock era. Systems Down does have a lot of its balls and its angsty, gnarly kind of riffing tone. Code Red is just as a perfect closer. It is an awesome number that really shows AC/DC that they sound triumphant with a banger of a closer, And I think to conclude the album in this kind of way, the attitude was there. Very precise way, as well as the beginning of the album to realize. I think the tracks to the album, on tracks like Rejection to Wild Reputation, they are very good in their own right. There were a few weaknesses on the album. I'm not a fan of the song Witch's Spell. In my personal opinion, that kind of song is decent to me, feeling safe, and it's not as perfect a number as well as the other song Money Shot. And I know that AC/DC are another one of the bands that tries to have some kind of a cheeky, provocative, involving women, sexualized kind of fantasy. It's pretty lackluster, and it's not really as a classic form like on something similar, like on the track of Whole Lotta Rosie, but I think Money Shot is the weakest. The production on the album, done by Brendan O'Brien, I actually enjoy it. There was a bit of a moment where I find some of the overall sound of the band involving the big anthemic choruses, involving the backing vocals as well, that can be a little too high in the mix, a little overproduced sounding. But I think with earlier records, there is some more of the better punch and the oomph of their sound. Still a great sound of the band, with the musicianship that is still at it, at their game. And I also give a lot of the credit to Stevie Young to present the band as well. Brian Johnson's vocals on the album, on the other hand, is fantastic. I really like the sound of his voice. Even though going through hearing loss, the sound of him really presentable. Brian's voice has been coming back into the swings and the shape on his tone, pretty raspy. And, you know, he's no Bon Scott, but his voice and his delivery onto the record was very, very good all around here. Power Up by AC/DC. I am interested to know what you personally think of this album in the comments below. There isn't really much to say or to add more when it comes to an AC/DC album, even though that earlier on, like I said, it sounds as predictable, but at the same time, it's just them being who they are. They have always been one of the bands that are shaping a formula of a strong, big amount of rock and roll since the very beginning. I'm going to give this album an 8 out of 10. So that's all I would like to say for Power Up by AC/DC. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.